Hey, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for tuning in to a new episode of the Ambition Podcast. My name is Tristan. I'm the host of the podcast. And in this episode, what you guys are going to be watching or listening to is a conversation I had a couple of months ago with a really good friend of mine named Ben. Ben is a graphic designer in the gaming, in the esports industry. I've known him for many, many years. And in this specific episode, we talk about a lot of things revolving around designing when it comes to recruitment challenges, designing and branding with organizations, and esports and gaming in general, and just talk about a lot of other cool and interesting things throughout this podcast. So hopefully you guys do enjoy this podcast. Again, it's been one that's been on the show for quite some time, which I do apologize. But with that being said, guys, let's get into the podcast. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Tristan. I am the host of the Ambition Podcast, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today, we have a very, very good guest for you, a longtime friend of mine. Ben, say what's up, man.
Hey guys, what's going on? Thanks for having me on the show, Tristan.
So yeah, first off, guys, I apologize for trying to get the podcast out of as much as I possibly can. Obviously, a one-man show here, and hopefully, and I'm saying this in complete, a future tense or so forth. It's probably going to be some time till this episode probably goes up, just because of the sheer amount of guests that I've got to get back up on the podcast and everything. But so Ben, for those that don't know about you and what you do, kind of introduce yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Well, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ben. I'm a graphic designer with 7 years of experience. Started when I was in high school, majored in it through college, and I just recently graduated. I do a lot of work in many different industries, but the main industry that I do work in is the esports and gaming industry. That's where me and Tristan met, and I just love working in the esports industry because I'm just passionate about gaming. Been gaming for as long as I can remember, and to be able to design around that is awesome.
Yeah, so kind of talk about how you got into gaming and everything, because I think that's always a really interesting story where people started out.
Yeah, definitely. So just starting off, like I remember as I was just like such a young kid, my grandparents actually had a Nintendo 64, and I'd play Super Mario Bros. On it, and I just sort of like fell in love. Eventually, as I got a little bit older, a little bit more competent, my parents got me a GameCube and a Game Boy, so I was like playing like Pokemon and stuff like that. And then it just like kind of like progressed as I got older, got into like shooters like Halo and Call of Duty. And it's interesting because gaming kind of sparked my interest in the design realm, because I always wanted to be like a part of a team. Just like playing Call of Duty, like I actually started out in the esports industry as like a sniper. I was going for recruitment challenges, recording, making videos. And I found out that I am terrible at sniping compared to other people.
Yeah.
So, I kind of like took a break from trying to get into teams as a sniper. And I didn't really know much about like the editing and designing portion of the gaming community.
Yeah.
And I saw on Twitter like all of these people like making headers for like FaZe members and SOAR members, and I was like, you know what? I'm taking classes for that in high school. I'm just going to play around with it and see where it takes me.
Yeah.
And that's how it all started.
Yeah.
Thanks to gaming.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this. I was never good as a sniper. I still am not good as a sniper. I think the last time I picked up a sniper, and some of you are going to be blown by this, the last time I really picked up a sniper was Black Ops 2.
Wow.
Like, I think after just all those games, like, sniping had just not really progressed. Like, I mean, then again, it could just be the fact that I'm a Treyarch kid and always will be. But nonetheless, I think it's quite interesting where things have gone and so forth. Now, one of the things I do want to touch on is a recent controversy that happened within the design community, centered around FaZe Clan. And I think you know what I'm going to talk about, the whole Phase 5 or whatever project that they did where they said, send us whatever designs you want to make and blah, blah, blah. But then if people went into the terms of service for the contest, it's like, FaZe Clan now owns the rights and they're able to do all these different things and they don't have to compensate and blah, blah, blah. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I kind of am on, like, both sides of the fence with that sort of thing. Like, it's something that I personally wouldn't do. A lot of designers at my level probably wouldn't do that. But, designers just starting out might just want to do that for practice, and that's perfectly fine. It's kind of like a pick and choose thing as designers. Like, I personally, like, I would have to get paid to, like, do something like that.
Yeah.
But, a beginner designer, they'd probably be all about that. And if they understand the terms of service and they're still cool with it, that's on them. They can do whatever they want to do. And I think it's good that FaZe publicized, in the terms of service that, they won't get compensated if they use their design. And, that just, like, lets us be aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it, but at the end of the day, I have the choice to not participate, and that's what I'm not going to do.
Yeah.
But,
I think it's also kind of different from esports because obviously FaZe has always been kind of like esports and gaming creator centric. I mean, I'll say that, and I think most people know this. You and me going back to the old days of YouTube. FaZe Clan has not always had the most stellar relationship with designers.
right.
Ferox.
Yeah.
But in terms.
Legend.
In terms of things, I think it's really good for designers who want to get into the scene or even just practice a little bit. And I mean, look, eventually, I'm sure that FaZe will say, look, yeah, we should give you something, a FaZe jersey, maybe some, hang out with the guys at the LA house for a week and a half or a weekend or something like that, which I think in turn would actually provide at least some value or even potential foot into the larger industry. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is, like, how do you go through creating a brand? Because I know you've done some social media designs. I know you do logo designs from time to time. Well, sorry, let me rephrase it. You do social media designs a lot, and sometimes you do logo designs. Like, what goes through your mind when creating a brand?
Okay, that's kind of interesting because I am in the middle of rebranding an esports org, so it's all fresh in my head. Yeah, so how I go about it is it's just like the biggest thing to start off with and stay consistent with is just communication.
Yeah.
Just figuring out that you or me, the designer, and the client are on the same page with what they want it to look like. So for example, I'm not going to talk about this project specifically that I'm working on because it's not announced yet.
Obviously,
but, yeah, but a project that is released, I did branding for the Wichita Wolves. I did their logo and I did all their social media graphics.
Yeah.
I don't think they still have the social media graphics up, but I initially did that like months ago.
Okay.
And what sort of happened is they came to me. They had this issue. They were originally the Wichita Tomahawks, and a lot of sponsors were backing out because they thought that like their logo and name was like a bit racist.
Oh
This and
yeah,
that
yeah, I
because
can
it's
see how.
it's reflecting on Native Americans. So
Yeah, cancel culture at its finest.
yeah, exactly. So they came to me and they're like, "We have this issue. We need to figure out what a good brand identity could be for us." So I just sort of went back and forth, and eventually they were like, maybe like an animal sort of logo would be cool as like an icon. And I was like sort of researching like animals in Wichita, and I thought wolves would have been like a pretty badass sort of design
Yeah,
for them and a brand to work off of, and they're cool with it. I sketched it all up, gave them a couple sketches to choose, and they chose one, and I just expanded on that, made the vector, and then go down the process line. We talk about colors, we talk about typography, and then we just talk about aesthetics, and then we just put it all together. And the thing that stayed consistent throughout that whole entire process is just the communication.
yeah,
It doesn't need to be daily, but it just needs to be consistent, and you just got to make sure that you two are on the same page. So no time's wasted, nothing's half-assed or anything.
yeah,
Because when I was a beginner designer, I would just like kind of dive into it, make the logo, show the client, and like plenty of times I just wasted my own time because the client's like, yeah, we don't really like that. We want it different. We want it another way. So
yeah,
just taking it one step at a time, creating ideas together, and just making sure you're both happy. That's how I go about it.
yeah. I like the thing you brought up about how a lot of beginner designers or even designers who spent maybe less than a couple years in the industry tend to rush things, and I think you might have been there at the time when I started it, when we had Awaken Studios originally, but that was a mess because like I'd see all these designers making really great stuff, and then as soon as it came to making Awaken stuff, it was like, oh, they rushed it, and I was like guys, like like the style was pretty, like I was pretty clear on what the style is and blah blah blah, like. I'm like, if I pay you guys, if I was an external guy, you would pay me, or I would pay you, and I guarantee you would have more, or I was like, not only do you have creative freedom within the guidelines that I give you, but as well, like I'm a pretty reasonable guy. Like, take as much time as you need and get the job done. And that's what inevitably led to Awaken Studios ending back in like 2017, 2018.
Right.
I wish that it hadn't, because I thought that it was a really great idea. But even now, like, everybody and their pet cat has a design studio or is partnering up with another design studio. So at this point, like, I've thought about bringing it back, and then I have to remind myself, like, wait, like, who would I pick up? And then I have to realize, like, I'm going to be spending a lot of money compared to back then. Like, graphics wasn't that much. I mean, but yeah, so I guess going from there, first off, I didn't even know that you did the Wichita Wolves stuff. I mean, I actually applied to work with them potentially. They never got back to me.
Yeah.
Which is perfectly fine, because I mean, I'm happy being my own boss, anyways.
I know the owner over at the Wichita Wolves. He is all over the place. He works 24/7.
Yeah,
he's crazy. He's a crazy guy.
I try to work 24/7 these days, and I think I can do it. It's no problem. But then my retribution for all the years since like the age of 7 for staying up like all night and then like getting home and not sleeping and repeating that process is kind of haunting me, not always, but it dearly is haunting me. It's like it's a nightmare at times. I guess the easiest way of putting it. So yeah, in terms of things, where do you see esports heading from a design aspect? I know there's a lot of talk about people wanting to really get rid of mascot logos, that they don't really vibe well. Do you think that they should still stay in the industry? I mean, I can guarantee you this: Awaken's logo is never changing. Like what I did was what Evil Genius should have done, where the Awaken logo as a whole is synonymous with the brand, but then I took the text and I took the lower half of the logo and I made that the secondary text.
Right.
Like that, I mean, you can kind of go into your thoughts on again the example I gave being EG, but like, what are your thoughts on where the industry is heading with designs in terms of logos?
So in terms of logos, I think we as a whole design community have come a long way skill wise.
Yeah.
It's just not even logos. Like literally everything designers produce now, like there's like hundreds of designers out there that are as good as me, if not better. And that's just like crazy, because I remember back in like 2015, 2016 when I started popping off, I was only like in the select few of like the decent designers that were like in like the better teams. It was like a really rare thing to be like a really good designer in the community. And now like there's so many people that like I probably haven't even heard of that are like so good.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. So I just want to put that. But as far as logos go, there are a lot of issues with mascot logos, but at the same time, if you can make a mascot logo work, then it just works.
Yeah.
There's this rule in design, which is the black and white rule when you're designing a logo, and it needs to be presentable in black and white. And that's the common issue that mascot logos run into, where like they have so much going on in it where they just simply can't have it in black and white, and that's sometimes a necessity to have as a brand.
Yeah.
Like if they have colors touching each other on a logo, that usually doesn't work out too well. But if they have like a nice stroke between the colors, then it works well. Like for example, with your Awaken logo, that logo is a mascot logo, but at the same time it can work in black and white, so it's fine. Same with the Wichita Wolves logo. I made it. It's a mascot logo, and I made it so that it can work in black and white as well. So people just need to be aware of that. But a lot of the times when org is starting up and they want a mascot logo done, there are plenty of times where the mascot logo just kind of goes downhill. Like, yeah, it looks cool, but doesn't pass the black and white test. It has too much going on. And another thing is, like, if it has too much going on, logos are supposed to be able to be seen very small, and they just need to be recognizable at a small size. And oftentimes mascot logos have too much going on, you know, so where it can't pass that rule too. So
I think when it comes, sorry for cutting you off here. I mean,
no problem.
I'll let you finish your thought here. I think one of the things again with the Awaken logo is just like even when we made the logo, when Derek, or Days made the design for it, like the original colors were yellow and like a green and yellow, like that was the original thing and so forth. I want to try to see if I can find it, because that will give you a good idea of what it looked like back in the day. But I think like that it was kind of a nice thing at the time and so forth. And I think just okay. So yeah, here it is. It was done as a green and yellow, whereas like really the main thing that was changed was the outer stroke and then the eyes and some of the other features. And I'll post that in the Discord for you, because like that that's kind of crazy looking back at it.
Yeah, definitely.
You get goosebumps even to this day looking at the logo. I think as well just the fact that we've actually seen this. I've actually seen people take the Awaken logo and literally turn it into black and white. Case in point with the dog tag idea that we had, or that I've had for so long, and luckily Agent Ink was willing to do it. I was sitting in my photography class my senior year, and I was scrolling through Google Chrome for whatever reason, and I saw on like a Pakistani retail website, I think it's like paras.pk or something like that, right? Someone had actually taken the Awaken logo, turned it black and white, and put it on dog tags. And I was like, that's really great. My first thought was, that's copyright infringement. Second off, it's like, that's a really good idea. Why did I not think of that? So obviously, as someone who owned the logo, I emailed the retail company. I was like, hey, pull this off your store. And I've spent so long trying to find people who could actually make it. Like, I went to Shirtle, and I think we were going to make it, and then Shirtle just got, like, way too busy. And then I was like, well, I want something where everyone can buy them. And I think, like, on the Agent Ink site, after shipping, they're, like, $15. And, I mean, I'm the guy who obviously approved how they look and everything. Part of the reason why I wanted the military, the dog tags, was to pay into the military aspect. Obviously coming from a military family, Awaken being called a militia, like, what do most military servicemen and women have? Dog tags, So it's something that kind of is special. I mean, obviously it's not engraved with your name and game and all of these different types of things, but I think nonetheless, still, like, it's something nice, And I mean, you know me firsthand. I literally approve every single piece of content, design, apparel. The only thing I don't approve within the organization is roster changes. Let's just get that clear. But yeah, so one of the things that I do want to talk about, and I know we've teased this, and I wanted to get it released earlier this year, but of course the pandemic and then the riots hit, was the RDL Collection. And I want to ask you about this because obviously that was both yours and mine brainchild, really. Mm-hmm. And I want to get your thoughts on just everything about that potential collection.
Yeah, well, we are already kind of like one step down with that. We got the Ruthless t-shirt done.
Yeah.
But I still think it's like a really cool apparel collection to launch. I remember we talked about this back over like winter break.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really good concept. It reflects on the brand. And it's a good opportunity for Awaken to kind of capitalize in this streetwear sort of craze that's going on in the esports industry. Yeah. And a lot of people, a lot of designers, I'm not taking shots at anyone, but a lot of designers out here are just used to the esports merch designs for clothing.
Yeah, where they just go like, oh, we're gonna make a champion hoodie and then text on the sides and like one of the things I hated was I'm a big fan of like Starset's clothing, right? The band, Starset, where they have all these intricate designs on the front and then like little placeholder type things maybe on the back or whatever. And to me, I'm just like, when you put the entire thing on the back, if I'm wearing a jacket or a vest or something like that, like, nobody's gonna see that. Like,
sure.
Like, if I'm wearing a tour shirt, then maybe it's a different story because most tour shirts will have, like, a mixture of both. But, like, to me, that was always something that bothered me. And as well, like, the fact that everyone's like, oh, we're gonna get champion clothing and this team X, or insert this team here, X champion, and I'm like, it's not really champion. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like that was always something that quite bothered me. I think the only team legitimately I know of that's worked with champion is X13, and that's just because it's Jesse and everything.
A lot of orgs are just like buying blank champion apparel pieces, and they're just like screen printing on top of it and saying that it's a collaboration. And part of me is like, isn't that illegal? You know?
I mean, misrepresentation and some other things like that, but I mean, and I'm going to take a shot at this, and I don't care who yells at me for it later.
Oh boy.
But I mean, like, at this point, most governments don't care about fraud, or at least some city and state governments don't care about fraud and misrepresentation. Because I mean, how many months did they let Regal Reserve get off the hook with that man shit?
Oh yeah, dude.
Like,
Oh,
I had to say that, just like I had to, and like I woke up one morning and I saw that they rebranded from Regal to Spades. My heart sank because you and I both know Isaac, who actually created Spades, and like they made one tweet or whatever where they're like introducing the founder and co-owner of Spades. I was just like, that's poor tasting. I was like, and like that was a yikes on my half. Okay, so one of the things I think you and I share a deep love for is somewhat the old Optic gaming, right? Obviously, there's parts of Awaken branding to this day that are inspired by stuff from the last couple of years of Optic gaming. Heck, I think I had a revamp planned, and maybe I'll have you do it, where it was going to be like a mixture of an Optic gaming header that was made like 6, 7, 8 years ago, and something else, And in terms of things, like how do you think Immortals should take care of the Optic brand? Because obviously, I'll say this: content is a druzy at this point. Like the content that they're doing is completely different from what the Optic as we know it did in terms of content. Like just giving a example, right? I mean, I hope I'm still not or I hope I'm still subscribed to the Optic channel. Or actually, no, yeah, I'm not subscribed to the Optic channel. That's not a surprise. Like that's not a surprise. But I mean, like, they're doing Optic recaps and VOD reviews and Optic plays, and like they're doing stuff with Uno, and you can tell like the engagement, likes to dislikes, is like terrible. It's like it's sad. So what do you think Immortals could do to help bring back, I guess, now obviously they can't replicate the Optic vibes from back in the day, but like, how do you think that they could do something better?
I think something that I noticed that Optic does a lot, just because of what happens with the Immortals buyout, is that they just capitalize on using their pro COD players as their like content creators.
Yeah.
I think what they need to do is just make some big signings, pick up some content creators that are content creators first. I love all like, the COD pro players, they're all great guys, but it just seems like Optic only has like a one dimension where it's, all right, we're professional COD, we got a professional COD team, got our COD players, watch them play. All right, now watch them create content. There's not really a strong mix in that.
Yeah.
So I think they definitely need to make a big signing there just to make their content size pop off a little bit more.
Yeah.
And just kind of become more personal to their viewers,
Yeah, because, I mean, like, I think at one point in time they did, like, an Optic Pictionary episode, and I slumped my head back, and I was like, really?
Yeah, like, we don't care that much about it.
Like, I'm like, great that, like, I'm seeing something that hasn't been done with Optic, but I'm like, most organizations have done something like this.
Definitely.
I think and I'm gonna say this in the slightest. I am not trashing Immortals. In the beginning, I trashed Immortals because I was like, great, you know, you guys could have just taken the slot, given everything back to Hector, or like, what I would have done, honestly, is I would have just taken, so I would have made some positions within Immortals rearranged and gave Hex co-ownership of IGC the same way that basically NRG has done with him. Because, like, if you think about it, right, when Hex made the move to NRG, he took basically the best duo in Call of Duty history. He took the Gears of War team. He took most of the CSGO players that have been with them throughout the years. They took TST. They took Joey, who did Optic Update, like a ton of different things. Whereas, like, imagine had Immortals, I mean, and even again, like, you know, Immortals, Gears of War, or blah blah blah, you know, just imagine what that would have been like. It would have been, Immortals could have truly been a powerhouse.
Right.
You know, not saying that they aren't, but I mean, and the reason I'm being kindly with Immortals is because I own 2 pairs of the Kswiss shoes. You know, which, well, like, before I say anything, these shoes are normally $110. I got them on sale for like $30 to $40 at a time.
Oh wow!
Like, they're like $33.50 on final sale, and that's like $8 shipping plus the taxes and everything.
That's crazy, man.
Exactly. So it's like I have a pair to wear when I'm out and about, and like that. I'm okay with getting dirty. I'm okay with sweating inside of them, like. And then, you know, in terms of other things, like, it is what it is. I think going from there, right? I guess I want to turn the table over to you a little bit. You know, let you ask some questions. You know, like I told you, you know, before the podcast. You know, I always like to let guests ask a couple questions. You know, and so forth. So the round table is all yours.
All right, cool. Well, you know, I think I'm the first designer on this podcast, right? Pretty sure.
Besides Zach from Sector 6, yeah.
Oh, right. I consider Zach more of like a CEO businessman type guy,
but
I
mean, like,
he does design.
He does design. He does run Black Box. I consider. I mean, Zach is kind of like this triple threat, like how I am. I just don't design, and I don't get involved in the apparel side of things. Even though that I would love to run my own apparel company, I've just been advised over the years not to because it's a mess.
Okay. Well, anyways, you know, a question that I want to ask you about design in the esports world is just sort of like, what for this one's kind of like for the designers out there. What do you look for when you are considering picking up a designer to your team, or, you know, contacting a designer for, you know, maybe like a one-time commission?
Yeah.
What do you look for?
So, what I look for in terms of things is, if it's a one-time commission, I look for, first off, like, price is kind of like a back in my head type thing. You know, where it's like, if the price is way out there, then I'm like, no. Like, when I came to you about, like, the design revamp that I was pitching earlier, like last month or whatever, there were people quoting me $300 for that. And I was just like, I was like, I was like, I understand if it's $300 for the entire thing. I'm asking for 5 designs out of that. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like that, you know, the price differentiating in a bundle is outrageous in that aspect. And I understand some of you designers live in other countries like UK, Australia, and the currency and how, you know, the economy may be completely different. I don't know, because I live here in the United States and we pretty much take shit for granted. But
Yeah.
so I mean, that, you know, price at the end of the day is always something I look at, just because it obviously is me, like, as a one-man show, and it always has been, and it always will be, because I don't want to get investors into anything. And that could be a question you ask me later. But in terms of what I look for stylistically, is I look for, first off, like, does your past designs fit the style, or can I see, like, where your past designs can elevate the Awaken brand in a sense, right?
Definitely.
I look at, like, obviously what experience you have. I look at follower counts, because I figure by that aspect, like, you know, do you get a lot of traction, and thus does that create, like, a lot of buzz, and therefore, like, oh, like, as soon as it goes out, like, oh, this is fire, this is absolutely insane, and then, you know, followers coming in and out. I think it's also just, like, your work ethic. Like, if you're able to sit down in a Discord call or a phone call with me and walk me through, like, and, you know, me doing the same, walking through what the culture and the meaning behind everything at Awaken is, and understanding that things have to be done so delicately, because, you know, like, my, you know, as I've said in past episodes, and just in general, like, I got into esports and gaming because of Optic Gaming, and so I've had this Optic culture seared into my head of, you know, you do this type of thing once a year, and then, you know, you start planning everything out from the rest of that, right? I think as well, just in terms of things, it's just one of those things that I look at a multitude of different aspects. I look at, you know, as well, what's your variety? You know, are you making 2D headers, 3D headers? Are you making, you know, polished esports stuff? You know, do you make, you know, not only apparel, or not only, you know, social media designs, but do you make apparel? Do you do stream packages? You know, can you do something on the fly that has never been done? Case in point, like, I asked you to replicate the Optic Gaming, like, you know, Power, Precision, Prestige type logo, when, you know, when Optic was in the middle of you know, chaos and dissolution. Like, I think it was literally the week after. I don't remember exactly when I asked you, but I know it was within a couple weeks of Optic getting announced, of the Immortals buyout. And I was like, this is the smallest way that I can pay tribute to Optic Gaming without, like, ripping something, you know, of the sorts and everything.
Definitely.
So I think that's what I look for when it comes down to things, is just how things can be done, and so forth, from a multitude of things.
Definitely.
I think that's what I look for when it comes down to building stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. So the next design related question I was just kind of curious about, is if there's any, you know, obviously you already mentioned Optic, but are there any other orgs that you look up to as, like, a design standard for Awaken? Like, any orgs that you model off of, any orgs that you just pull some inspiration from?
Yeah, I would say that there's always, because, you know, you know me over the years, that I personally don't want to. It's not that I can't, like the way I creatively work is I look at how something is done out there previously, and then I say, wait, how can I make this better, right? Like, if Astralis came out, like, with a really nice, like, we've won Intel Grand Slam, you know, like, you know, back to back or whatever type thing. I look at that design and I say, how can I do that better? You know, or I nitpick, like, the smallest things. Like, we went with Shazad, you know, made by a duel from Lethal Strike for the new rebrand that I showed you, or the new concept. One of the things I really liked that he did was in the design, on like some of the different social media designs, was he put stars next to some of the words, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, military stars, like the wall of honor, when when you're going to like memorials and you see like the stars for fallen people. I'm like, that's like, even though he lives in a completely different country, I'm like, that stylistically to me is cool. But I guess I kind of like twisted that a little bit, but from an esports standpoint, I would say there's always organizations out there that people can find something from, and really like take that style and run with it. Like G2, Vitality, 100 Thieves. I would say sometimes I think TSM and Cloud9 are more the like basic design stuff, and to me, like, that's great, but at some point in time, like, they've got to evolve. Like, you have to remember that at one point in time, like, the Cloud9 logo that we know it as was not even made by someone within Cloud9 originally, you know? Like, like Corey was an outside designer and changed the logo and then was brought in, and even then, like, back then, like, esports designs for their website, you know, when they were on Squarespace or whatever, was like logo, or was like game background, blue text, names, like text, logo, everything. So, and I'm not knocking on that. If Jack or anybody from Cloud9's watch, I'm not bashing on it, because it worked for you guys for years and years and years. But I think the orgs that people need to look at are 100 Thieves, Fnatic, Excel. I think just looking at a multitude of different orgs, and I mean, it's sometimes orgs that you've never heard of, like, that sometimes have a really cool design aspect that you could implement from.
Definitely.
I just think in terms of things, esports design is one of those things, and personally, one of those things I really hate is the whole trash talking behind, like, oh, can I, like, use this header as an example, or like, hey, can I make something similar to this header? And then, you know, the minute you post it, you get 10 designers trashing you on Twitter for it, you know, because it's similar, but at the same time, like, everything in esports is similar these days, you know, like, nothing is original. It's the same with content in, like, Call of Duty. Every year, basically from now on, and every year since, like, Black Ops 2, you're going to get sniping montages up the walls. You're going to get your mini-tages, your long-form stuff. When it comes to tips and tricks, you're going to get your how to get the battle pass done quick. You're going to get how to rank up fast, you know, with tips and, or with gameplays. You're going to be getting your nukes, your 200 pluses, your blah blah blahs with, you know, guys like me. You're going to get your insane class set of videos every time, a new blueprint or just a class set of comes to mind. Like, nothing is unique anymore, you know. Case in point, going back to, like, Optic with doing Optic Pictionary or Optic Plays, and it's just like, well, every org does that. You know, like, one of the things I'm doing is very similar to Optic Plays with Awaken, but instead of it being Optic Plays, it's Awaken versus, right? So it's members going against members. Like myself and Cass, we did a best of 3 in Call of Duty. You know, I ended up winning that. You know, 2v1. The one map that he ended up winning was like 30-29. You know, like it literally, like, he was like 28 to he was 28 and I was 20. And I told him, I was like, I wonder if I could make a comeback here. I pull out the Ram 7. I'm just starting to beam, and the last kill he gets on me is a sniper, and I'm like, crap.
That sucks, man.
So that gave me even more incentive. What I also attribute that game to my monitor black screening multiple times, because in the game, like, I'm screaming, like, I'm black screening, shit, I'm black screening. Like, and I think that's a mixture, because at the time I was using an HDMI switcher, which it seems like it's acting faulty, or it just maybe isn't working correctly with my Elgato, given my Elgato's the HD60, and that's almost as much of a dinosaur as a Dazzle these days. But even still, I think really going back to what you were saying, those are the orgs I would look at, and even if any of those orgs don't stylistically to you fit your mindset, just go on something like Behance, type in the word esports, and just go scrolling for an hour or two. You'll find at least a dozen and a half things.
Seriously.
I have an entire folder on my desktop just dedicated to images I've seen on Behance and designs, and saying eventually I can make something like this, or I can have a designer make something like this, and it works.
100%, man. 100%.
And also, you can ask me questions not even relating to design as well,
Right. Okay. So, with that being said, are there any sort of big plans that you have for Awaken coming out, just in general, that you can share?
Yeah, so the first one is something we're working on internally, is building a performance model, very similar in nature to Astralis. I think that, when... Really, I think, the last couple months have just been a yikes for a lot of organizations. The riots or pandemic hopefully settles down and the economy comes a little bit back. I think that's when we're going to start releasing a lot of the apparel collections and apparel ideas that I've had. Because I wanted to do that, with especially the EGL collection with Peyton for the Awaken 7-year stuff. But, I can't do that because of this pandemic. And, realizing if I put something on the Agent Inc. store, it may not sell. It may completely bomb, even though Peyton is a wonderful designer. So I want to take that time to really, figure out how can I hype it, blah, blah, blah. Can I, send it to an independent apparel company, have them test make it, do photography, videos, blah, blah, blah. And then when it comes out, actually have it ready to go. That was one of the things I wanted to do with Next Gen way back in the day, was obviously Sector 6, Arma, all these companies, they post photos with jerseys on mannequins, and Zach, if you're watching this, say hi to Kevin for me. But in terms of things, I had the idea, I was well, let's do video content around these, things. When Obey partnered up with Sector 6 in 2018, that was basically a year or two after I had my idea, And I think I could still do it. I mean, obviously, esports apparel content and, video content can work. It absolutely can. Yeah. I like the idea that Oxygen Supremacy had with clothing and some other items that they'd ship them in boxes. That's a good idea. I mean, 100 Thieves, I think, did apparel the best because, besides the Numbers collection, obviously. But in terms of things, I mean, who knows? I think for Awaken, really perfecting content is going to be a big thing. Because obviously we're not a tips and tricks organization anymore. Even though I'd like us to be, posting gaming entertainment. I think what we're going to do is, stream highlights, tips and tricks, your personality-driven content, your 20 questions, you're sitting down and doing, vision-styled videos, things like that. But I think at the same time, you have to, and going back to the way that Optic did it, was just everything's got to be curated perfectly. And I think that's one of the things that I'm personally special at, is the fact that I started out, very very similar to Naisha. I started out as a content creator, obviously not a player, but started out as a content creator, moved into an organization owner aspect, and then built everything, and never lost sight of doing content. Still to this day, I think I'm ahead of most people because I do all these different things at the same time, including content creation. So then I can say, well, I know what it's like. I know what the last 8 years have been like. I could probably tell you what the next 8 years are going to be like. You know? So that's where I stand on that type of aspect. I think that's kind of nice. And even, you know, Tribute being one of the old Awaken members from, like, where I would consider a dynasty era for us, at least. You know, where we were just overcrowded with teams and doing so well. I think that maybe getting in some battle royale games would help eventually. You know, besides Valorant or whatever. I mean, Valorant I consider to be a multitude of things, because it's like some things from Overwatch, some things from CSGO, some things from Rainbow, some things in a battle aspect. You know, it may not be battle royale like the Warzone or Apex or H1 that we know of, but I see elements of that. I mean, I think as well, just building partnerships within the space that are legendary for someone of our size. Case in point, the Open Door saying, like, even if I've said, like, even from a cost of value, because it's like a couple $100 a month, that, you know, like, wouldn't be a bad thing to do. Like, it's something where you have to realize, like, athlete marketing and content onboarding is completely unheard of in esports. And the fact that we were the first team to really do something with someone that works with all the major collegiate athletic programs and the NFL Players Association and blah, 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 I think really stands out. But even if we decide not to continue working with them, you know, based off costs or whatever, like, we're still going to be reading and teaching all of our players and content creators stuff that they post on the blogs and helping them understand what their value is from not just a person, but from a brand. How can they leverage their brand? And I think that this is something that other organizations aren't doing. And, you know, I think as well, there's multiple aspects to Awaken that are different because of Awaken not just being Awaken being Spark in a sense, which has all these different things and so forth. You know, I know, case in point, like Ash the other day talked about, Ash from Aura, you know, talked about the whole idea of having a talent management agency inside of an organization. I think that Awaken with Creators Page, we did that because it was like our own collective that me and Zevo and a couple others got involved in, that originally was like director's block, and now it's both content and talent management. You know, I feel like I've neglected that brand a little bit, Creators Page, because, like, I've just been so busy with all the other things that finding content creators and talent and so forth that would be dedicated to it is kind of always tough. But I think that, I mean, that's the surface level of things that I could talk about. You know, there's some things that I want to talk about, but at the same time, like, I can't, because I know, like, the minute this podcast probably goes up, you know, weeks or so forth from now, like, Cast or Umbreon or someone else is going to be like, we agree not to talk about this. I'm like, well, yikes.
Yeah, man, I understand.
You know, I think that's, I think as well, just being really open with design, with with our members about everything. You know, I think that's something that we're doing. Like, we still have an open door policy where, like, even if you leave the organization directly, like, you can still be part of the chat.
Yeah.
And the reason why is from two things. One, I realize, like, because of my autism, I'm horrible at communicating with people, and I'm afraid that, like, if you leave, I'm never going to speak to you again. And then it's like, well, we lose all that precious time. Whereas, like, you know, like, and I know some people bitch about, like, oh, like, there's 60 people in there and maybe 11 or 20 out of their, you know, post in there directly. But, you know, at the same time, explain to people, like, people have families, people live in other countries, blah, 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 this and that. Like, Viteri, you know, she pops in every once in a while, but I understand that's because she's, like, you know, in college and blah, blah, blah. You know, Rice Chef, you know, she streams and she still promotes Awaken and all these different things, just doesn't post in the chat because it's like, you know, she has a family life. She has a husband, all these different things. And I mean, that's the farthest I'll get with talking about anyone's personal life. But, that in terms of things like that, I think just that aspect of, even if you leave the organization, like, hey, stay in the chat. Like, we love having you, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'd hate having a mass exodus of that chat because of the fact that I'm afraid, like, I would hate to lose communicating with somebody. I think it's also the fact that, for so many years, I was always in control of who got added to that chat rather than, like, it meant to be, like, captains and occasionally, like, an extra player of a roster, all the content creators, staff, blah, blah, blah. And, in terms of things, like, it's something that I've kind of been a little bit more lenient with because I want, I guess, us to be a little bit more open. And I think even sponsors are starting to work with us a lot more, like Control Freak. We were one of the first to get invited to the Forge program, and even like tomorrow I have Luke coming on to tomorrow. For those that are listening to this, I'm recording this on June 11th. Like, literally, Luke from Control Freak, who's the esports partnership guy, is supposed to be on the podcast tomorrow. Awesome. Which I think is really awesome. We want to get people from inside and outside the industry on content and podcasts. I think as well, 2020 has been a redemption year for myself. 2019 was one of those years where it wasn't a bad year, but I think for esports as a whole, it was just like a slump. Like no one really liked the summer because, again, Echo Fox ended, Optic Gaming ended, there were so many changes with all these organizations, and no one really liked franchising, and there were so many other things within smaller organizations that it just became like a yikes to deal with. But 2020 for me, like, for instance, within the first 2 months of the year, I had presented to the business center of the community college I dropped out of. And I tweeted this recently that video, out of all the, like, I think dozens of videos that they have, I'm in the top 9.
That's awesome.
Like, to me, I looked at that as a redemption. So I'm presenting to members of the community who are 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, how many years older than I am. And, like, I skyrocketed. Like,
definitely.
Like, I'll pull it up right here, because I want people to understand as well, like, the differentiating between the views of, like, one of their normal videos gets and then what I was getting, right? Because I think when you do that, then you get to see, like, holy, like, this was insane.
Yeah.
So let me find it here. So yeah, they've got 117 videos out of that. Keep in mind, right? The most recent ones that they've done, obviously they've done a couple that are digital versus, like, if you were there physically, then completely different. But, like, even around, let's just say even around the time that I went in, 60, 183, 52, 72, 87, 36, 21, 135, 70, 40, 80, 70, 30, 50. Here I come with 134 views, and then after that, like, most of them don't break, like, 50.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And not saying that that's a bad thing, because everyone, like, I've had a year or two of decreasing numbers at times and then getting good, views on videos and so forth. But even still, like, that to me was humbling. Like, even last year when I pitched to Shark Tank, the producers at least, not the show. I want to be very clear about that. Okay. Like, my mom was like, you might end up embarrassing yourself, because you're not going in with a product, you're going in with a service-based thing. Literally a couple days later, when I got the email, I printed it out, I brought it up to my mom, and I told her, I told you so.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
When I did my behind-the-scenes video about Spark and so forth, like, myself and the producer that was assigned to me, like, we had a good conversation about, like, he was like, this is a really great quality video. And I was like, yeah, I shot it on an iPhone 6s in 4K. I edited it in Adobe Creative Suite on my own, like, everything, like, filmed on not just any, like, regular tripod. we got like a camera tripod that has like one of those base like Vivistar ones, and then I set my like tripod onto that because my vlogging one happens to have a cold shoe mount on the bottom of it, and that's what I did. And like that to me last year was humbling. I think doing the Esports Digital Summit very recently was humbling, and I've got to take a lot of the VODs that I have from that and convert them into MP3s. That's the surface level of what I could talk about with Awaken. I mean, you know, I'll at least, you know, from the public aspect, because I don't want to say anything and again ruin hype and days, weeks, months, or whatever of planning.
Definitely, man. Totally understand you, but you know, you got a lot going on, and that's awesome for you and Awaken. So
I mean,
good luck with all of that.
Most people don't realize it, but like I'm one guy, and I'm working on 10 different projects at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, and I'll break it down for some people who are like, this kid's not even 21. My personal channel, Awaken, is an esports organization. I run Spark Esports and Entertainment, which has a media arm, a tournament league, a talent management agency, a marketing company, a biz dev group. Like, I work with Fearless Records as a community team leader. Hopefully, when, you know, things get, you know, back to normal with concerts and so forth, that'll be fun. And then I now sit on the United States Esports Association. Like,
awesome.
yeah.
A lot of great stuff going for you, man.
Yeah. I guess, you know, are there any other questions that you have for me? You know, there's so many things you could probably ask me. Business, esports, content, etc.
You know, I think you answered all of them just off of that Awaken question.
Yeah.
There's a lot said there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'm all good, man.
So yeah, one of the things I do want to talk to you about from a design aspect, you know, is I know recently you changed your prices and everything, and I see a lot of designers doing that over the years. What was the driving force behind doing that? Was it something where, if, in order to stay up with the industry, and I know it's at times also the whole stigma of like designers going like, oh, your work is so much better than the price you are doing it at, like you should up your prices, blah blah blah, like this considered, or this not considered but consortium effort of doing that. Like, what was the driving force behind that?
It really is just dependent on what the designer is like sort of dealing with, I guess, like client wise.
Yeah.
Because at the time when I had to up my prices, it wasn't because I wanted to be making more money. It wasn't even because I think my products were, or, you know, what I was producing was worth more. Yeah. It was simply because I had, and I'm not trying to, like, brag about it or anything. I know
no,
for some designers, clients are, like, really difficult to come by.
Yeah.
But, you know, over the years with the prices that I've had, I just had too many. And I needed to, like, filter it out where, like, you know, some of them stayed where they could continue to pay me with the updated prices, and then, you know, some of them trickled away, or, you know, they just like you know, ordered less, or like just like waited a little bit, because I just had so much going on where it was at the point where I was just designing for like literally when I wake up and when I go to sleep, and I love designing, but I don't love it to as much to like consume my entire life. Yeah, you know,
like you want to be able to go out, have a life, hang out with friends, hang out with family, like. And I'm just gonna say this retroactively. If there was ever a time where like I ended up stressing you out in the mix of all the things, I deeply apologize.
No, I don't even consider you know, the point where I was at where I was working so much to be stressful at all. You know, it's awesome to know that so many people want to like buy from me, you know?
I say that because I know, like, you got so busy that, like, you started having to pick and choose, like, what positions at certain teams you were taking with, and I know that and unfortunately, like, we were on the chopping block for that. And I think, like, I think chief design officer role, like, positions are very stressful to begin with, because like, compared to, like, a marketing officer where it's, like, very cut and clean as to coming up with a lot of ideas, like, chief design officer is essentially in charge of, like, the overall design structure and everything that comes out of the organization from the design aspect.
Right.
But besides my approval, and I think that the reason I apologize is just because I feel like, it can get very stressful at times, and even if there was a shred of it, like that, that maybe made you feel hammered in some way. Like, I just feel like morally I should have to do that at least. Even though that you and I are very, like, nose to the, to the grind and very definitely, like, hardworking type guys. And going back to what you said, I think even, though you left that position, like, like, obviously I'm still going back to you and like, the only reason I didn't go with you for this revamp thing was just because, like, I was trying to find, like, a sweetheart deal because I didn't have a lot of money. I still don't, because, like, I now am losing, like, 12 hours a work shift and blah blah blah.
Hey, dude, don't worry about it. And so, it's just like, I kind of compare it to food, like, sometimes you just want to have a Hot Pocket. You don't want to go to, like, a fancy restaurant, you shouldn't, feel bad that you don't come to me, I have a lot of clients that, always come into my DMs, or like if they, like, announce that their new branding that they release, and, like, it wasn't done by me, but, like, I like it, or I comment on it, it's like, hey, you're looking good, this or that, they'll, like, shoot me a DM and, like, oh, I'm so sorry I didn't come to you. I'm like, you don't have to apologize, dude.
Yeah.
It's just all your preference at the time. We all have lives. We all have things going on. I don't hold anyone accountable if they don't want to come to me,
Well, yeah, I mean, I just have to say that because I feel like there's times where, like, especially, because, like, as a owner and so forth, and as a person who's also, like, creatively built, I can understand why, you'd have to take a step back from so many things, and one of the orgs you step back from, I want to ask you about them, because I think you know what I'm going to talk about. And in terms of things, I think that's just, I think it's a polite thing to do, because a lot of people these days in esports, like, don't get a clear head. Like, I'll say on Twitter, I've stopped posting a lot more, but I still have, like, my stubborn wrestling heelish persona that I bring out at times, just out of comedic value. Most people, I will say this, most people think I'm an asshole. I'm not an asshole. Like, it may come off that way on Twitter, but, like, it's not meant in any way, shape, or form. Moving on to what I wanted to talk to you about was the 11 drama from last year, or no, it was earlier this year. Sorry. Like, obviously, you were the person who, I'm pretty sure you did the social media, you did the logo, you did the apparel, and for those that don't know, there was a team called 11 here in the United States that came out, and they were doing, like, a lot of cool things in at least the apparel space. Like, I think they were mostly content. They weren't really, like, esports competing or anything. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But what happened was 11 Gaming, the parent company of SOAR, they, from what I understand, issued a cease and desist for just the entire name because of the fact that they are one in the or they're basically similar name in the same industry or blah blah, or like whatever the aspect was, and they had to basically forcefully rebrand to Contra.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on that? Because obviously, like, pour your heart, your emotion out. Obviously for being the creative director over there, whatever the role was there, and I think you just recently left them or something of the sorts.
I'll explain that.
Okay.
But first off, just starting off from the top, 11 already started before like I was there, but like recently started. So like they started like just in 2020, like just around the January of 2020. And I remember I wasn't getting like any clients at the time, and I tweeted out something like this was before I made a single t-shirt, hoodie design, anything. I tweeted out, I know I can do great things in apparel. I just need someone to put me on. The owner of 11 saw that, and they contacted me, and I made a hoodie for them. They loved it so much. They wanted an entire line. They loved that so much. They just wanted me on board. And, dude, it's a great experience. It's a great relationship with them. Everything was going good. We had like a solid, a solid relation, a solid sort of like vision of like what we wanted to do as the brand 11. Because they just started out, and I've had a little bit more esports experience than the owner, so I was like kind of like helping out here and there, making some decisions for them. And we just got sidelined by 11 Gaming, that issued a cease and desist because they had a similar name in the same industry. And to me personally, I didn't really like, I'm not the owner of it, of 11 or anything. My work for 11 will always like be existing on my website if I choose to showcase it there. So it's not like it just been deleted off the face of the earth. But I think the ones that were affected mostly by this was the owners, who had to, unfortunately for them, fortunately for me, pay me a boatload of money to basically redo their entire I gave them a hell of a deal too, because I felt bad for their position. So we rebranded it Contra. And funny enough, me and the owner were actually already talking about, like, we weren't talking about changing the name or anything, but we were already talking about changing up the logo, because they just, like, they didn't really have that good of a logo at the time, and they wanted me to, like, sort of tune it up down the road. So, I mean, this sort of project was already kind of coming, but it's at a lot larger scale, having to redo all the ads, on top of the logo and the branding. And I had to redo all of the merch.
That's true.
So here's everything's still going good with Contra. At the time, but I'll talk about as much as I can.
I mean, I don't want you to like divulge things and then have a bad like falling out or something.
There is no dude. You'll be shocked.
Okay.
They're rebranding, and I'm rebranding them again. And it's not for any cease and desist thing. They're just, they are kind of, Contra was kind of slowing down a little bit from their end. They had some people come to them, like, asking if, like, they're still in the active org. They had, some members leave. They just saw numbers going down, and they had such a great shock value that they were just riding that wave when they rebranded to Contra. They were getting like a lot of hype. They grew to 1,000 followers in like less than like a month, maybe even like less than 2 weeks. And they were just doing really, really good for themselves, and I was happy to be a part of that. But eventually, the owner is same age as me, so he's graduating college, and he's dealing with all this stuff, and he just kind of went a little bit inactive simply because of all this stuff going on in his life that would normally like still be busy for him, but just went way more busy just because of the pandemic and the stay-home order, this and that. So he kind of went a little bit inactive, which in terms made Contra go a little bit inactive, and he just saw the org dying, and he got all of the stuff that he needed to do out of the way in real life, and he kind of came to me and was like, we really like what Contra was like when we first started, I think we should do it again. And now that like I'm graduating college, we can just stay riding this wave. We can just make the wave even bigger, build from it instead of slow down. So they want to sort of do a little rebrand again. New name, new logo. And just kind of get the shock value from that, up our standards, and then just keep building off of that, and like no slowing down, no excuses from here on out. So I'm still working with them. Yeah. We're still cool.
Okay. So one of the things that I don't know if you share the same mindset with that, is something very I know this is completely out of left field. John Taffer, the guy who runs Bar Rescue. He's got. Yeah,
I was just watching Bar Rescue this morning.
Like, there's an episode that's always stuck in my head. It's the episode First Strike, Second Base, right, where they went back to a restaurant for the first time, and he said, like, if the logo changes this many times in this many years, like, it's going to be a failure no matter what, because the same location, the same like Twitter, same social media, whatever it is, like, people are always going to know, like, oh, this org rebranded to that, and then rebranded to this and that. Like, that's the same reason where, like, with, like, orgs like Revenge GG and some other ones out there, I'm just like, let it die, because, like,
right.
Like, I was part of a Revenge in 26, within a certain part of time. I don't remember exactly when. I'd have to look on Twitter. But that was the reincarnation of it, right? Where, like now there's, like, a amateur European-based organization. I'm like, this organization was once second place at COD Champs. Like, you're just devaluing the brand at this point. The same way with, there's a couple orgs out there that I'm, like, trying to think of that come to mind. But I don't remember the names, that have switched ownership over the years, and then I'm just like, at that point, I'm like, just end the brand off, because, like, at that point, like, and don't even use the same social media, because at that point, it's just like why would you do that? Case in point, Regal Reserve, they wiped the Regal Twitter and then made Spades, and, like, what I even hate is, like, Spades did a pretty bad job of copying 100 Thieves. Oh, Lord, man.
Oh, my God. That is like the epitome of cringy gamer design.
Like, what I'm talking about. I don't even have to say about that.
Dude, I have had the weirdest experience with Regal Reserve. Because they're trying to get me to design for them. I think in, like, 2017, 2018-ish.
Oh, so you were under Mr. Most Wanted scam lord,
Yeah, dude, it was interesting, dude. They wanted me to, like, they first proposed, like, a monthly contract of, like, $100, and, like, to some that's cool. To me, it wasn't. And then they're just trying to, like, bribe me with other things that were really weird. And I just sort of just, like, cut ties with them.
I remember I woke up one morning and they tweeted out that they had gotten a sponsorship with a company. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. Let me see what this company does. And then I looked and I was like, they make socks.
Hey, I mess with socks. I like socks.
What?
I guess.
Well, I was like esports socks. I was like,
oh.
Yeah, like,
man.
Like, it was like they were like a traditional, like, sock company, and they got into esports with Regal. And I was just like, it's a sock. I was like, no one's going to be looking at your socks like, dude, what's that logo on your sock? Like, I saw that and I was like, that is the dumbest sponsorship you can get besides a betting company. Don't hurt me, Astralis. Don't hurt me. But in terms of things, like, dude, it was crazy. I mean, I unfortunately have the pleasure of like knowing everything that a lot of esports teams, good and bad, have done. Just solely based off my experience. Like our Rocket League team that we picked up this year, right? I actually saved them from signing the team forces.
Ooh.
Because what happened was like we were having contract negotiations that night, and I asked, and they were like, well, we have other offers on the table, blah blah blah, and I was like, well, who are the other offers from? And they told me like the first one was Team Forces. I literally got out of my chair. I was screaming no, no, like no, like, and I spent 10 minutes telling them everything because obviously you and I have dealt with Soupy, and we know some of those things, and I was just like, no, dude, like, no. Luckily,
Right.
They signed with us instead, and they're actively competing, behind the scenes. Like, there's not a lot of Rocket League tournaments going on right now, which is unfortunate. But like, I think when the riots of pandemic hit back up, then that's gonna be fixed. I mean, Siege. I love Siege, don't get me wrong, but Siege is gonna die. Overwatch is dying, and I'm happy about Overwatch dying, and you know why. Everyone knows why. Like I've beaten that to a dead horse with just being like, someone asked me the other day, and I just told them, I was like, I'm happy it's dying, because they screwed Overwatch with contenders when they screwed myself, and who knows possibly how many other teams out there, because if it happened to us, it happened to others, and even then, just they didn't champion for the ecosystem of Overwatch to have some competitive aspect to it, outside of Overwatch. It's basically like, if you're not in Overwatch League or Overwatch Contenders or Path to Pro, you're not getting a career in Overwatch.
Yeah. The only thing that I do like about what Overwatch did for like the esports community is sort of I really do believe they elevated esports to the next level simply
absolutely.
because of their franchising. Like, I remember I was like on my way like somewhere in Center City, Philadelphia, and like I'm just like walking down and I see like this like electronic billboard, and it's like, watch the Philadelphia Fusion.
And
I'm just like, that's crazy. Like,
yeah.
Not like 5 years ago, I would never believe that there would be esports advertising or esports on like national TV.
Like
it's crazy.
Like 5 years ago, you'd never think that like a city, major city, would allow esports to take their convention center and turn it into an esports and entertainment expo. That being Arlington,
yeah.
And I think that was kind of awesome. I've been wanting to go there for so long. Like, I went to Texas for Thanksgiving. I was like, well, Arlington's hours and hours and hours out of the way, blah, blah, blah. I think when I go to Vegas in September for my birthday, or around my birthday, one of the things I want to do is just go, like, to the Razor store, the esports arena, with my dad at least. My mom won't. I know that wholeheartedly. Not that she doesn't like gaming, but I think I've told you what happened a couple years back. With my mom was there that night at the Harvest Festival. You know what I mean by that festival, right?
I don't.
The Vegas shooting.
Right.
I had woke up on Monday morning. My dad had came into my room at 6 a.m. in the morning and said, your mom and your grandmother were at the concert. There was a mass shooting. Your mom is safe. She just called me from the airport. I literally had school that day and I had work that day. School, like, I literally, like, before I got to school, I went to an administrator, and I said, look, I don't want this to be spread to, unless the people that need to know about it. So teachers, like, they kind of gave me the nod, like, if anyone doesn't want to talk about this or be in the room talking about this, then, they're, just step into the hallway, blah, blah. Most teachers were kind of nice because, I'm not a troubled kid or whatever. So they were like, well, we'll get someone to ring you from outside, or not ring me from outside, but to come get you from outside the class or whatever. When time is ready. And then I think the worst one was I was at work that night, and my mom, so actually what happened was I was working that night, and one of my managers or coworkers tapped me on the shoulder, right? One of my managers had tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around, and I just saw my mom standing there, and I just looked at them. I'm like, "Can I have a couple minutes?" And I just ran to my mom and like hugged her and everything in front of everyone in the store. Like, no one had any idea because nobody knew because I didn't tell anybody. Until after,
that's crazy.
Like afterwards, like some of my managers asked, some of my coworkers asked, and I was like, my mom was in Vegas last night, and I was like, that needs no other saying than that. I wanted to say at the Luxor when I go to Vegas in September, and my mom's like, no, and I was like, okay, like I'm like, why? And she's like, we stayed there. I was like, oh. Hilariously enough, my mom won't stay at the Luxor, but she'll stay at the Mandalay. She's like, the Mandalay Bay would be an option, even though she doesn't want to be anywhere near that side of the strip. That's just how traumatizing it is to this day. Like, we lost a chair that we had since I was a child, from that concert. Like, the FBI contacted my mom, and she literally just told them, like, don't worry about the chair, just keep it.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I talked about it very briefly that day, but that was a day where I was just like, I don't want to deal with anybody. I told someone asked me, like, what are you going through? I said, if someone I told someone at school, I was like, if someone opens their mouth badly right now, just about anything, like, not even relating to me or my family, I'm pretty sure I'd punch their lights out.
Yeah.
Like, even though that was an occasional moment, because, like, high school bullshit and drama is always running rampant. Like, then again, you know me, I open my mouth and I say something, and then it's like 3 days later, fight breaks out.
Yeah.
Funny story, that did happen once, actually.
Oh, jeez.
A friend of mine, some kid had been asking where a friend of mine was, and I was just too tired. One morning I said, why the fuck are you looking for her? She doesn't like being around snakes. And that spawned like 3 days of us just bantering, and then like eventually some physical shit getting into it.
Damn, dude.
Like, I think I look back at my high school years, and I think, God, like, compared to middle school and my earlier years, I was not too much of a troublemaker. Like, middle school years, they won't even let me see my record. When I was in high school, I asked, I was like, how many pages of my permanent record? Because I wondered. They're like, it's a couple pages. I was like, I figured.
Jeez, man.
Because I was like, at one point in time in middle school, I had Saturday detention.
Oh, jeez. Dude, I've never gotten detention before. I'm a good kid. I don't get caught.
I would get detention, or I'd get ISS for the dumbest things. Like, for having a phone out, for just saying something that wasn't allowed. Like, it was, like, if you opened your mouth and said, like, some swear words or voiced frustration to a teacher, like, you were expected to go to the office.
Damn.
Like, it was at a point in time where, like, I knew the nurses. Well, I mean, I stopped by the nurses every day because, like, they were in a separate wing of the building and, close to the library. But, like, I knew everybody in the nurses and most of the front assistants in the office by name.
Huh.
you know, then again, in high school, I knew almost every teacher, and I knew every administrator and security guard. Like, I've always been a pretty likable person. You know, like, even to the point where there's times where I've had issues with some of the security guards over things that both of us didn't really want to do. Like, for instance, one year I went to Pearl Harbor for Christmas, right? Or I went to Hawaii for Christmas. I came back with a bullet necklace from Pearl Harbor. In the school district handbook, anything of violence or gore or weaponry is not allowed. Even though that most of the security guards had served the military time, they're like, we don't want to do that, but, you know, like, you know, obviously, you know, who would want to, but, like, you know, they're like, it's kind of expected, like, just don't wear it in the building at least. You know, they're like, you can wear it outside of the building, but, like, once you step indoors, like, just, you know, keep it, like, out of sight, out of mind. Like, you know, they're like, you just can't have it, like, out in front of your shirt, like, tuck it in or whatever. And I was like, okay, that's fine. You know, one of the things that I got away with a couple times in high school was I had boxing gloves in my bag.
Trying to box kids?
No, literally, I had weight training multiple years, and I just happened to have like kickboxing or UFC gloves, and I'd bring them because I figured that was easier to grip a bar and everything rather than like getting sweaty and whatever.
Right.
And I mean, occasionally if someone ever did put their hands on me, like, hey, I have them there, you know. Tell someone open my bag, like, catch them with one hand like Iron Man would, and like, whatever. But, like, even that, I got an issue over that where they're like, kickboxing gloves are considered a violent weapon in school. And I was like, technically, I use them for recreational use because I'm, like, self-defense. When I'm in the weight training classes, like, you know, that's why I have them in my bag. And they're like, well, don't, like, I used to wear them around the school. That was the thing. I used to wear them on my hands when I was walking through the hallways, like, just for fun. Like, yeah.
You're wild.
Well, I think it was, like, most people knew, like, I wasn't a troubled kid. I didn't get in fights often, like, so it wasn't like, oh, like, you know, Thomas is over here wearing boxing gloves, okay, security, like, you know, getting radioed, being like, make sure to shadow this kid, you know, something like that. Like, it was mostly like, if they asked me to, I'd take them off, and if I was in gym classes, then I'd put them back on, you know, like, that was the thing. I mean, the last thing I'll say that I did in high school that was pretty wild, and you're probably going to shake your head at me, was I did the G Fuel challenge one day in class right as the teacher was doing attendance.
Oh, God. And I assume you failed the challenge?
Okay, so what happened was like, I had a friend of mine who, I was going to do it for Snapchat, okay, because at the time, TikTok and Vine Vine had existed, but died. TikTok hadn't been invented then. But, so I had my tub of G Fuel, because I used to carry, like, 1 or 2 tubs of G Fuel with me wherever I went. And so I took out the scoop, and I did that and everything, and she had me on video, and, like, my teacher asked me for my name, and I said, like, here, and a little bit afterwards, like, you could just start seeing the, like, red liquid coming out of my lips, and she's like, are you okay? I'm like, I'm like, I'm fine, as I'm, like, tasting the cinnamon, like, burn and pounding on my chest, because I'm like, just get through it, and then, like, right after she was done with doing attendance, I just ran over to the trash can. She had, like, a like oh shit reaction, like everyone did, and you know, the whole class period, she's like, are you okay, are you fine? I'm like, I'm fine. It's like, I'm fine. Like, you know, I apologized to her for like a week. I was like, I'm sorry, like, that won't happen again, I apologize. I never really explained to her what the G Fuel challenge was, so. And I think even then, like, this was like I don't remember what the class was, and I apologize for that, but, like, she was the nicest teacher ever, like, and I hated that, you know.
Yeah.
But that was the type of things I did in high school, dude. I mean, funny enough, I talked about that. I almost got expelled over doing vlogs in high school.
Jeez, man.
Like,
dude, you're crazy.
Well, because their whole thing was like, you need and this will be the last thing before we go back to esports and design stuff, right? It was my sophomore year. I started doing vlogs, and I started doing them in the hallway and blah blah blah, right? I got about 3 or 4. I got 3 episodes in, and what kicked it off was that one day in my weight training class, which was really like the only class I really filmed, because it's weight training. It's people lifting. It's people doing arm exercises. Like, it's not anything like bothering academic the academic ability of somebody else. It's like we're all lifting. Like it's essentially just filming this one class is an ego trip. Okay, for most people. Then again, I could say also like how many people post in college workout videos, how many people post personal training videos, blah blah blah. Things like that. And what happened was we had a substitute that day, and even though like I had planned on doing it, like I woke up that morning, I was like, I'm gonna do a vlog, because I think that might have been like, again, my 3rd or 4th video. I might have just turned 4 years on YouTube at the time. And what happened was, she said, well, obviously all the students in here, which were like close personal friends of mine and whatever, that I had from school, were like, no, it's fine, like he does this all the time, it's not a problem, like whatever. She was like, well, I'll just send you up to the office anyway. Probably what I should have done was I just should have like taken the walk to the gym, turned back, or like I should have just walked, grabbed a soda, came back, and been like, yep, it's all fine. But because me being an honest person, I was like, well, you know what, sure, okay, like I'll entertain it, because the substitute wasn't like, she wasn't mean, she was really nice, like grandparent age, like whatever. My principal told me, well, you need district approval and legal approval to do that, blah blah blah. And I was like, well, I did it the week prior to now in the hallway, and you asked me, and you didn't tell me any of this. You asked me what it was for, blah blah blah. You didn't bring any issues up. And I was like, well, which made me think like I'm under the okay to do so, because it's like I didn't get put in the office right afterwards, and so after that they were like, well, that you can do these in the videos, or you can film your weight training class, whatever. You just need to tell us ahead of time. And I told them, I'm like, well, I don't plan out like days ahead of time that I'm going to do this, right? Like, you don't do that with vlogs unless it's like a concert and you booked it like 6 months in advance, or an event 6 months in advance, right? And then they were like, well, okay, like we'll need written permission from everybody and so forth in that class or whatever, or they were like, we'll need permission from every yeah, it was, they needed written permission. And I said, technically the code of conduct says I just need express permission. It doesn't say whether I need verbal or written or whatever. I was like, most of these people are my friends. You go to them, they'll say, yeah, he's done it a couple times in here, he's a good kid, doesn't get in trouble, blah blah blah. Even my administrator knows that deep down to this day, that I was never a bad kid. And basically she says, well, that's just what we want. And I said, well, like, I'm just going off of what's in the handbook, at least. That resulted in me getting put into the office by my administrator, calling my dad and saying, like, if he does not stop doing these, then, or during the school hours, then there could be consequences, such as violating the code of conduct set by the school district. At the beginning of my junior year, like, I went to my principal one afternoon, like, as we were all getting out, and I just asked her, I was like, am I allowed to record, like, during school events, boosters, blah blah blah. She's like, yeah, that's fine, like, because that's not during the school hours. And even then, like, I was getting like 400 or 500 views a video on doing those. But I always found it hilarious that, like, high school is supposed to be where you're creative and innovative, and yet I was stifled at like every fucking turn. Like, I wanted to have an esports thing, and they told me, like, the district doesn't want it as an athletic club. And then, as well, like, if you want to do it as a student club, you need to have at least this many members and then a teacher. And I'm like, well, what teacher in this school building knows about esports and online content? Like, there's not a class for that, you know. And, you know, my go-to teacher being my case manager was already busy enough, you know, like, so, you know, that was there were just so many things. Like, even in my photography class, like, I love my teacher dearly. You know, I use them as many subjects in my photography assignments. Like, we had boundaries of where around school property we could not go. And I was just like, this is photography. We're supposed to be creative. Like, why are we having boundaries? I understand if it's for safety, if there's, like, construction crews over at the public stadium that we all use, you know, or public field or whatever. But I was like, otherwise, like, what, you know, like, what's the point?
Yeah, definitely.
You know, and, you know, most of the times teachers sympathize with me and they're like, we understand, but there's nothing we can do. But yeah, definitely. So going back to esports and so forth, I guess really, like, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. What do you think people need to understand about the design community or in the industry as a whole compared to years back? In terms of maybe a stylistic, a reputational, I would say intellectual aspect, because I think there's a lot of instances these days where we just see a lot of falling short to understand esports designers and design studios, and as well just a lot of issues over again what the design industry is doing in terms of prices and as well, you know, you make one mistake on a rebrand and it's, you know, an entire community coming at you.
Right. So you know, back in the day, like, at least when I started designing in the esports scene, there was, like, really not many people, like, paying at all. Like, a lot of designers were just doing stuff for free if, like, the person had a lot of followers or if they, like, liked the idea. Barely anyone was charging. And, you know, the whole entire design scene back in the day was just people grinding up teams to just build their following.
Yeah.
You know, get to a team and, like, do, like, a couple projects for the team and then, like, try to get into, like, a bigger team. It's just, like, this whole, like, ladder system.
Yeah.
You know, just growing. And no one got paid for anything of that. And I know, like, all those teams are, like, just sniping and trick-shotting teams. And today, you know, there are still, like, sniping and trick-shotting teams that don't pay their designers, and that's completely fine, you know, if the designers are cool with it. But, you know, they aren't really as big as it was back in the day. Now, you know, as I stated before, there's a whole lot of talent in this design community in the esports scene. And we're sort of just, like, having a self-recognition that, we need to get paid for the work. It's like a career path. You know, like, there's still some designers that do for hobby. They do stuff for free. That's cool. I was at that stage before. And some people just want it to be a hobby. That's cool. But, you know, people like myself, we want to do this as a living. So, you know, you can't pay bills with followers. So,
unfortunately. Well, I mean, indirectly you can, but, you know, like, you know, indirectly you can pay, you know, I mean, because, you know, someone will charge a value per post or whatever, you know, when it comes
like Rick and Morty.
When it comes down to that type of thing. So I definitely understand from that aspect at least, or whatever.
Definitely.
So, I definitely agree on that aspect. I think as time has gone on, myself and a lot of owners have become more understanding of the design community. I mean, do I agree with the outrageous prices that some people are charging for social media designs? No. But I understand, like, if you live in, like, California, New York, other countries, like, the conversion and the cost of living, especially me being from California, like, I understand what that's like, because it's not cheap, it's not fun.
Here's the other thing too about pricing. There's people that charge a lot, and
Yeah.
like they might not even be like the biggest designer out there that's like charging so much. But like myself, I increase my pricing to what seems to be a lot to some people. And the thing is, people are buying it that, a client doesn't know. So, like, someone comes to you and, like, they charge, what, like $300 for that project that you showed me. They probably have clients that pay them that much. And,
Yeah.
it's just a really situational thing.
Yeah.
Or they might just have like a lot of work, and it's like the only way I do this if someone would pay me $300.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So
I think in terms of things, it's just it can be situational. I think from myself, I come from at least maybe a different aspect where, like, with Spark, when I got into marketing and consulting and everything, like, everyone was charging $200-$300 for a single service. I did like 30 to 50 for like a multitude, because I was smart. Or well, okay, when I say smart, I'm not taking a jab at any of you designers or other business people. Let me just say that. When I say smart, I mean, like, it was smart to bundle all these things together and then go to smaller orgs and say, like, hey, rather than pay someone $300 to do it, or pay someone X amount of money, per month to do this, like, trust me, because I'm an org owner myself. I've got this experience in other things, like that's one of the things where, like, for instance, with me being an intern, on the USEA, like, I'm good with content, I'm good with social media, I have context in recreational esports, but as well, I'm like, one of the things is diversity and inclusion. I'm like, I'm on the spectrum. Like, I think I can give pretty unrivaled experience as to that, because I don't know too many other people in esports who are open about being on the mental health spectrum.
Yeah.
I think in terms of things, though, that I feel like maybe if there was an esports designer union, in a sense, that kind of gave a guideline for, like, prices and so forth. Not saying, like, a minimum pricing, but, like, the maximum you could charge for a design is this, relevant to, a group of factors and so forth. Very similar to, like, a talent agency in a way. I think that would make sense, because I think, like, that would allow organizations to work with people without a fear of breaking banks and pocket. Because, like, part of the reason that I'm always looking for the best price deal, in the back of my head, is because I understand, like, again, I'm a one-man show, and, whatever money I'm putting in is not going towards players or towards other things for the organization. I'm going into what the look of it is and hoping that look will generate value and eyes and impressions and so forth.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's always been one of my biggest things.
Yeah, I'm a big budget guy myself when it comes to anything. Like, I know, like, all of these deals at 7-Eleven, bro. Like, I know, like if you buy, like, a certain combination of stuff, like, you get, like, a discount. And, like, even, like, the cashiers are like, when did this happen? How is it coming out to this? And it's just like, they're like, alright, well, like, it says this number. Like, I know all the deals.
Like, you just walk in, you buy, like, a soda, like, a bag of chips, buy this, and it comes out to, like, $1.98. Like, wait, what?
Like, for example, like, if you buy, 2 Coke products, like, just regular size drinks, and 2, Snickers at 7-Eleven,
Yeah.
You get one of the Cokes for free and one of the Snickers for free. So it's literally like half the price. So like that's what I would do when I would go like on a 7-Eleven run, and like the cashiers are like just shocked. They're like, "How did you know how to do this?" And I just like, I know my stuff. I know my deals.
I just be like I just lift my head, look up, at least so they can see my eyes, and I'm like, I know things.
Yeah, seriously.
Like that's just me. Like one of the things that I didn't know until I started working night shift was like we have Deluso sandwiches that are made within the store for like $5, like the packaged sandwiches or whatever that are normally like $5. Someone in my my night shift crew showed me that you can actually get them for $1 with the employee discount. I was like,
Yeah.
I've been
just
sitting
smart
over here
budgeting.
eating like chicken most of the nights, like chicken strips and whatever, like which even are better because like the chicken strips would be like $8.99 or sometimes $7.99 or whatever, and it have like 10 pieces of chicken when it's a 6-piece, pack or whatever.
Love that. Love that.
Like that was me. I'd hustle. Like I'd actually look, like I would actually like rearrange the packs of like microwavable chicken, and I'd look and be like, oh, okay, how many is in this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, like that would be me. Like I'm always gaining not gaining the system, because I mean obviously I'm not like doing anything that's wrong or anything, but it's like looking at like okay, so like,
just simple life hacks.
Well, like breaking down like, okay, if this is $7.99 and there's this many pieces of chicken in this one compared to the other one, I'm like, what's the the difference breakdown of that? And then I'm like, well, at that point I'm like, if I'm paying $8 for 7 pieces of chicken, I'm like, I'm paying roughly like 90 plus cents, versus where if I'm having like 9 pieces of chicken in there or so forth, even if it's smaller sizes, I'm like, I'm paying way less.
Yeah.
Like that's the type of thing, and I'm not a math guy. But that's the type of things that go through my head these days. Or however things go. It also depends on my mood. But yeah, is there anything else that you want to talk about on the podcast or so forth?
I think I'm all good, man. I think we covered a lot of topics.
Yeah, I mean, I know that for the most part, most of my high school stuff and my Vegas thing I'm going to cut out of here, probably. But nonetheless, in terms of things, though, I do appreciate you coming on to the podcast. I know you're a very busy guy, same as I am, even with all the riots and the pandemic and, Comcast throttling your internet. Again, as we've been, for those that are listening to the podcast, before we press live on, or record on this or whatever, not live, sorry. Ben's had a pretty, how would you describe it? Because chaotic.
I just say unfortunate.
Yeah, because you've had, you've had, just like Comcast throttling your internet. Then you had the college situation that happened, and probably we don't want to. Your tweets are enough insight into that, enough, and even myself, I know of it because you know what I went through firsthand. And then like going back to if you decide to publish some work to your portfolio, I think you know what work I'm talking about.
Yeah. It's been a crazy week, man. It's been a crazy week.
Like, I called you and you were like, what the fuck? Like, are you serious?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah. I was like, basically, should we touch on it briefly? Like, did you get everything sorted out, or...
Oh yeah, everything's sorted out. We're cool.
Okay, so yeah, I'll briefly touch on it. Basically, Ben did some like work for an esports league, and it turns out that the esports league, which was sketchy in and of itself, apparently might have had a stolen logo, and so then people were coming at Ben and threatening like legal people didn't even go to Ben. They came to me because I wanted to buy the header, and they're like, "You realize you're buying assets with a stolen logo?" I was like, "That doesn't seem like this guy who I've known for 3-4 years. Like, are you kidding me?" And then like I texted you or I DM'd you and I was like, hey, I need you to call me, like.
Yeah.
And you like picked up the phone and was like, so what's going on? And I was like, yeah, some dude's threatening to sue you over the headers and because of the logo. It's like it was like, what? I was like, yeah. Like,
yeah.
I was sitting in the
we all sorted it out. From my conversation with the logo owner,
yeah,
he said that he thought that I claimed that I made the logo, which I never did, and I sorted that out with him, and he was like, "All right, we're cool, we're cool."
Okay, so cool. I can send you that $10 then.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
I just like woke up one morning and I got a message from someone saying like I'm filing lawsuits against anyone who did anything with a logo, and I was like,
seriously, man.
I was like, that's kind of petty. I'm like, I could count on two hands the amount of people who stole the Awaken logo. I've never once. I mean, then again, like every time I've caught the Awaken logo being stolen, I just tweet from the Awaken account. They end up taking the tweet down, changing things. There was one team that they did it very smartly. I'm guessing they had someone go into Illustrator and do this, or Photoshop or whatever. But they actually changed the name of militia to a different thing, and then ran by a different, or like changed the Awaken name or something. No, they kept the Awaken name, but they changed the text at the bottom where it says militia, and I was like, that's nuts. And then of course I was ticked, and then I tweeted it. I was like, this is quite well. Someone had messaged me about it, and I was like, that's quite maddening. And then at the same time, I was like, great, you guys stole our logo, nice going. Like, we found out easily. But at the same time, I was like, you guys took that much creative work to go and to literally like brush out the Awaken, or to brush out the militia text and add something different. I was like, it's like, bravo. It's like it's like, bravo, well played. Then again, most people knew as soon as they saw, like, because obviously they didn't change anything else. But yeah. So again, I appreciate you being on the podcast and everything.
Appreciate you having me, man.
For those that, or for those that want to possibly follow you, check out your work, see what you're doing. I mean, I may have an opportunity or so for you if you're interested. But when it comes, when it comes down to it, just let the podcast know where they can find you.
All right, cool. Well, at PixelNerdBen on Twitter and Instagram, if you want to find me. My website's in my bio, and that's everything. That's everything you need to know about me.
Yeah. I mean, besides, I eventually need to come to Philadelphia and get cheesesteaks eventually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean, I do something very different with Philly steak meat. And this will be the last thing I say before I wrap up and whatever. Where instead of making like Philly steak hot dogs or like sandwiches or whatever, I do tacos.
That's interesting.
I take a skillet.
That's not a bad idea.
Well, here's what I do. So I have like some of the, I think it's like quick meat. The 100% sirloin, beef steak, Philly meat or whatever. What I do is I take a skillet, I pour some olive oil in it, I throw in a decent amount of the meat and whatever, and then at the same time I put some onions in there, like chopped onions, blah blah blah, don't care about the size. Then once that's done, I get some I think it's flour tortillas. I have them sitting, waiting, and everything. I mean, I once tried to do quesadilla burgers where I tried to do skilleting the tortillas, and I didn't realize, well, they'll rise, and then it's like, yikes. Then again, I'm 20 and I'm not a cook,
Right, right.
And so in terms of things, when it came down to it, that's the type of stuff that I'm good at and then what I'll do is I'll take some like shredded Mexican cheese, I'll put it on each one of the tacos and then put it in the microwave, let the cheese melt, and then it's just like you get the the juice out of the onions, you get the flavor out of the meat, you get the cheese, and plus
that sounds good.
It's wonderful, and it
awesome.
But in terms of things, guys, thank you. Thank you again for coming on to the podcast. For those that are listening to this, I really appreciate you guys listening wherever you are listening to this, whether it be Anchor, Breaker, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Unfortunately, the redheaded stepchild known as Apple Podcasts, you have forever left the chat. In terms of things, for the people watching this on YouTube, I really appreciate it. Make sure to leave a like wherever this video is on, and subscribe to the channel wherever this is on. Make sure to comment down below, possibly guests that you want to have on the podcast, or tweet me at TazeTheGod on Twitter, or the podcast Twitter, that being AmbitionPDCST. And I look forward to having more guests on the podcast, both inside of esports and my circle, outside of my circle, and so forth. But I really appreciate you coming on.
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on. Talk a bit, converse about design and esports. It was a great time, man. Thank you.
Yep.